Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you're part of our journey. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and get ready for a story that will leave you thinking. And if you love inspiring tales, a like goes a long way. He's not our responsibility. These cold words hung in the air as the elderly man collapsed in the ticket line. Around him, the crowd shifted uncomfortably, smartphones already recording the unfolding drama. Outside, Chicago's winter howled, trapping hundreds of delayed passengers in the station's unforgiving limbo. The old man's weathered hand trembled as he reached for support that wasn't there. His breath came in shallow gasps that formed small clouds in the station's inadequate heating. Security personnel maintained their distance while whispers rippled through the crowd. Some amused, others concerned, none helpful. In the commotion, nobody noticed when his wallet disappeared. From the shadow of a worn hood, a pair of attentive eyes tracked every detail. The observer's gloved hands tightened around his backpack straps as the station worker repeated his callous statement louder this time. What happened next would remind everyone that sometimes heroes wear hoodies, not capes, especially when they think nobody's watching. If this moment made you feel something, imagine what's coming next. Hit that like button and stay with us. Subscribe now. Chicago Union Station had transformed into a reluctant shelter that morning. Outside, a merciless blizzard painted everything white, canceling flights and redirecting travelers to already overwhelmed trains. Inside, tension thickened the air as hundreds of strangers competed for limited resources: information, tickets, space, warmth. The massive hall's grandeur only amplified its inadequacy in this crisis, marble floors reflecting the harsh fluorescent lighting that cast everyone in an unflattering pallor. The fallen man was Arthur Lennox, 80 years old, traveling alone to attend his only son's funeral in Pittsburgh. His journey had already stretched through a sleepless night on uncomfortable benches. When he finally reached the ticket counter, exhaustion and grief had pushed his frail body beyond its limits. His collapse drew a perfect circle of space around him as people instinctively backed away, creating the paradox of isolation within a crowd. The station worker, his name tag reading Evans, stood at the edge of this circle, arms crossed protectively over his uniform. "We've called emergency services, but they're backed up all over the city," he announced to no one in particular. Then, lowering his voice for his colleague, "We can't let him into the waiting area without a ticket. It's policy." Their exchange wasn't private in the echoing hall. Several passengers shifted uncomfortably, some casting judgmental glances, others determinedly looking away. A teenage girl captured everything on her phone, narrating quietly for her future audience. In this suspended moment, a different movement disturbed the crowd's edge. Someone was working their way forward, not pushing aggressively, but moving with quiet purpose. Few noticed him at first, just another traveler in a navy hoodie and weathered jeans, his face obscured beneath the hood's shadow, a well-worn backpack slung over one shoulder. Nothing about him demanded attention, which was precisely as he preferred it. Keanu Reeves had chosen train travel deliberately that morning, despite his team's protests. He was due in Detroit for a private foundation meeting, another of his numerous unpublicized charitable endeavors. The storm had been unexpected, but he'd found a certain authenticity in experiencing the same delays and frustrations as everyone else. His celebrity afforded him countless privileges. Occasionally, surrendering them kept him grounded in the world he moved through. Until now, his anonymity had held. The hood, the winter beard, the ordinary clothes, his armor against recognition had worked perfectly. Yet something shifted as he watched the scene unfold. The fallen man's dignity stripped away as public spectacle, the callous institutional response, the crowd's passive voyeurism. It crystallized into something that demanded more than observation. Keanu paused, weighing choices. Intervention meant exposure. Exposure meant disruption to his carefully maintained privacy. But in this calculus, something else outweighed these concerns, the simple question of what was right. His decision made, he stepped forward. Things are about to take a turn. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe, like our video, and keep watching. Excuse me. Keanu's voice carried a gentle authority as he navigated through the last human barrier. Heads turned at the sound, a few expressions registering the first flickers of recognition. He knelt beside Arthur, removing his gloves to check the older man's pulse with practiced care. "Sir, can you hear me?" His attention remained fixed on Arthur, not the growing murmurs around them. The elderly man's eyes fluttered open, confusion and embarrassment battling across his weathered features. "I'm sorry," Arthur whispered, attempting to rise and failing. "I just need to... My son is waiting." His words trailed off as he became aware of his missing wallet, panic sharpening his gaze. "My money, my ticket, my ID. Everything's gone." The realization sent a visible tremor through his already weakened frame. Keanu steadied him with a firm but gentle hand on his shoulder, the gesture immediately calming. "It's all right. We'll figure this out together," he assured Arthur before turning toward the station worker. "This man needs help now. A warm place to sit, water, perhaps something to eat." His hood had fallen back during his movements, and now whispers rippled through the gathered onlookers. Smartphones rose higher, camera apps replacing social media as the priority. Evans, the station worker, straightened, recognition dawning on his face as well. His demeanor shifted instantly, celebrity awareness overriding policy concerns. "Mr. Reeves, of course we can..." But Keanu raised a hand, gently interrupting the sudden reversal. "Just as you would for anyone in need," he said quietly, the correction clear but not unkind. The rebuke hung in the air, impossible to miss, yet delivered without malice. Several onlookers exchanged glances, the implicit message resonating. One woman lowered her phone, suddenly self-conscious about her documentation of someone else's suffering. "My son's funeral," Arthur managed to explain between labored breaths. "Pittsburgh, tomorrow morning. His address is in my wallet. Nothing left now." The heartbreak in his voice cut through the ambient noise of the station. Keanu reached for his own backpack, retrieving a water bottle that he uncapped and offered to Arthur. The simple human kindness felt amplified by the previous absence of it. "I have no ticket now," Arthur continued, a lifetime of pride making this admission visibly painful. "No money for a hotel. No ID to even prove who I am." Around them, the circle of observers had grown, the spectacle now featuring someone infinitely more camera-worthy than an anonymous old man in distress. But Keanu remained focused entirely on Arthur, as though the growing audience didn't exist. "Would someone find a chair?" Keanu asked the crowd, his tone suggesting the obvious next step that somehow no one had taken. The question broke a spell. Suddenly, several people moved at once. A businessman dragged over a nearby bench. A woman offered her travel pillow. Another produced a granola bar from her purse. The shift was palpable, the crowd transforming from passive observers to active participants. Evans returned with his supervisor, a tight-lipped woman whose nameplate identified her as Station Manager Harris. She surveyed the scene, her eyes darting between Arthur, Keanu, and the dozens of phones now recording everything. Corporate calculations played visibly across her features, potential liability versus potential viral disaster. "We have a first aid station," she announced, her professional smile never reaching her eyes. "We can accommodate Mr. Lennox," Arthur supplied weakly. "Mr. Lennox there, temporarily, while awaiting medical services." She emphasized temporarily, making the limitation clear. Keanu helped Arthur to his feet, supporting his weight effortlessly. As they began moving toward the offered space, following the manager's brisk pace, he leaned closer to Arthur. "About your son's funeral," he said in a voice meant only for the older man's ears. "I think I might be able to help with that." The promise held no grandstanding, no expectation of gratitude, just the simple offer of one human being to another. This story is only getting deeper. What would you do in this situation? Comment below, and let's talk. The first aid room was small but private, a welcome respite from the public spectacle. Arthur sat on an examination table, color gradually returning to his face as he sipped water. Station Manager Harris hovered near the door, her presence both officious and uncertain. "Medical services estimate another hour due to weather conditions," she reported, checking her watch pointedly. "Our policy for non-passengers—" "I understand your policies," Keanu interjected calmly, "but perhaps today calls for compassion over procedure." He turned to Arthur, ignoring Harris's thinly veiled impatience. "Tell me about your son, if you don't mind." Arthur's eyes misted immediately. "Michael, my only child. Heart attack at 52. No warning." His voice cracked but steadied as he continued. "Brilliant engineer. Built bridges all over the country." Pride momentarily overcame grief as he spoke. "He was always the strong one after my wife passed. Now I'm alone, and I couldn't even make it to his." Emotion finally overwhelmed him. Outside the door, the crowd had grown. Word of Keanu Reeves's presence had spread through the station, drawing even those who had been contentedly waiting elsewhere. Phone cameras pressed against the small window in the door until Harris pulled the shade down sharply, visibly frustrated by the situation's escalation. Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "With your permission," he said to Arthur, "I'd like to make a few calls." He stepped to the corner of the room and spoke quietly, but with clear purpose. First to his assistant, arranging private transport to Pittsburgh. Then to his foundation, discussing accommodation needs. Finally, to someone about medical assistance that wouldn't require lengthy ER bureaucracy. Throughout these conversations, he maintained a low profile. No name-dropping, no demands for special treatment, just quiet efficiency. Harris watched with growing discomfort, the disruption to station routine warring with the potential PR implications. When Keanu finished his calls, she cleared her throat. "Mr. Reeves, while we appreciate your interest in this situation, the station cannot assume liability for—" "I'm not asking the station to assume anything," he replied, his tone still gentle but firm. "I'm simply helping Mr. Lennox reach his son's funeral. Human to human." He turned back to Arthur. "Transportation is arranged. A doctor friend will be here shortly to make sure you're okay to travel. And I've booked a hotel room in Pittsburgh near your son's address." Arthur's weathered hands trembled as he tried to process this kindness. "I can't accept. I have no way to repay." "You would do the same for someone else if you could," Keanu said simply. "That's payment enough." The statement hung in the air, challenging everyone present with its fundamental truth. A soft knock interrupted them. Evans entered, his demeanor transformed from earlier bureaucratic indifference. "Mr. Lennox," he said, extending a worn leather wallet. "Security found this in a trash can near the men's room. The cash is gone, but your ID and cards are still there." Arthur reached for it with disbelieving hands, opening it to find a faded photo of a smiling middle-aged man, his late son, still safely tucked inside. "Michael," he whispered, tracing the image with one finger. The emotion in this simple gesture affected everyone in the room. Even Harris looked away, her professional detachment momentarily cracked. Keanu knelt beside Arthur, meeting him at eye level. "Now we have the address," he said quietly, "and more importantly, you still have this." He nodded toward the photo, acknowledging its true value. Outside, the crowd had grown restless. Someone knocked persistently until Harris opened the door a crack. "The doctor you called is here," a voice announced. Harris reluctantly admitted a woman with a medical bag who introduced herself as Dr. Chen. She moved efficiently, checking Arthur's vitals while maintaining his dignity throughout her examination. "You're experiencing exhaustion and mild dehydration," she explained kindly. "But with proper rest and fluids, you should be fine to travel." She handed Keanu a small bag of supplies. "Instructions are inside. I've included my number if anything changes." Their brief exchange suggested this wasn't the first time Keanu had called upon her services for someone in need. "It's not over yet. The best part is coming. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it." As Dr. Chen packed her bag, Keanu received a text. "Transportation is ready," he informed Arthur. "A car will take you directly to Pittsburgh with stops as needed for your comfort." He helped the older man to his feet, steadying him with a respectful grip. Arthur stood straighter now. The combined effects of hydration, nutrition, and, most importantly, restored dignity. "I don't know how to thank you," Arthur began, his voice stronger than before. "Live well. Remember your son proudly. Maybe help someone else when you can," Keanu replied, the simplicity of his request underscoring its authenticity. He gathered Arthur's few belongings, slipping the doctor's supplies into the man's coat pocket. "The hotel reservation is for 3 nights. Take the time you need." Station Manager Harris held the door, her earlier resistance replaced by something approaching deference. The crowd outside had grown substantially, a sea of phones raised to capture whatever might happen next. Arthur hesitated at the threshold, intimidated by the attention. Keanu sensed his discomfort and reached for his own hood, pulling it back over his head in a subtle reminder that this moment wasn't about him. Together, they walked through the parting crowd, Keanu subtly positioning himself to shield Arthur from the most aggressive phone cameras. Some onlookers reached out, seeking to touch or engage with the celebrity in their midst, but Keanu remained focused on Arthur's safe passage. Others, catching the true significance of the moment, lowered their phones altogether. At the station side entrance, a black SUV waited with the driver standing ready. Keanu helped Arthur into the back seat, ensuring he was comfortable before passing a discreet envelope to the driver with instructions. Several station employees had followed them out, Evans among them, watching with expressions that ranged from awe to shame. "Mr. Reeves," Evans called suddenly as Keanu prepared to close the car door. "I'm sorry about before, about what I said." The apology was awkward, but sincere. Keanu paused, considering the station worker thoughtfully. "Don't apologize to me," he replied, nodding toward Arthur. Evans swallowed hard, then stepped forward to address the elderly man directly. "Sir, I'm truly sorry for how you were treated today. It was wrong." The public admission cost him visible effort, but seemed to lift something from his shoulders. Arthur nodded his acceptance, then reached out to grasp Keanu's hand one final time. "My son would have liked you," he said simply. "You remind me of him, always seeing people when others just saw problems." The comparison visibly touched Keanu, who squeezed the older man's hand gently before stepping back to close the car door. As the SUV pulled away, someone in the crowd began to applaud. The sound spread, building into a wave that wasn't for the celebrity they'd recognized, but for the human being they'd witnessed in action. Keanu acknowledged it with a slight nod, then pulled his hood forward and turned away, already moving toward a different entrance where his own transportation waited. By evening, videos of the incident had spread across every platform. Comment sections filled with reactions not to the celebrity sighting, but to the deeper message. We judge ourselves by our intentions, but we judge others by their actions. The world sees our true character not in our public pronouncements, but in what we do when we think no one is watching, even when a million eyes are tracking our every move. 3 days later in Pittsburgh, Arthur Lennox stood at his son's grave after a funeral attended by bridge engineers from across the country. In his pocket was a handwritten note from Keanu with a simple message: "Your son built bridges between places. Today, you helped build one between people." Arthur folded the note carefully and returned it to his wallet right beside his son's photograph. 2 reminders of the best of humanity carried close to his heart. Wow, what a story! If this moved you, imagine what else we have for you. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and let us know what you think.